The first insult came before the last bell even rang. Freak poet. Someone muttered loud enough for everyone in the hallway to hear. Darius didn't flinch, though the word burrowed under his skin like a thorn. He hugged his battered notebook tighter, pressing it against his chest as if his ribs alone couldn't protect the words inside. By the time he reached the front steps of Jefferson High, the whispers had become a storm. They said his name like it was dirty, spat it like gum stuck under the desks. All because of one poem. One stupid, beautiful poem. The poem hadn't been meant for anyone but himself and maybe for Miguel. Miguel, with the dark curls that fell into his eyes, with the quiet laugh that felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. But Ms. Campbell, their English teacher, had asked everyone to submit something for the annual school anthology. Darius had folded the page carefully, slipped it in with the others, never expecting anyone to notice. But people noticed. The anthology had been printed yesterday, and by this morning, every hallway buzzed with it. His poem wasn't about rain or the city skyline, or even about the vague dreams teachers loved. It was about Miguel. The way his hands smelled faintly of cinnamon gum. The way he shifted when he was nervous. The way he made Darius feel like maybe he wasn't invisible. Darius had written love, and that was his crime. When he got home, his father was still in his work boots, dust clinging to his jeans, sweat staining his shirt. Samuel Johnson had been laying bricks since dawn, but the exhaustion in his body didn't dull the sharpness of his eyes. He set down his lunch pail, pulled a crumpled copy of the anthology from the counter, and held it up. "This yours?" Darius's throat tightened. He nodded. His father flipped to the page, his calloused finger pressing into the lines about Miguel's smile, Miguel's touch. For a long moment, he didn't say anything. The silence stretched, heavy as cement. Finally, Samuel sighed. "You know what they're saying about you at that school?" "Yes," Darius whispered. "You know what they'll say about me? About this family?" His father's voice was low, not angry, but weighted with something worse, fear. "I didn't mean, you meant every word," Samuel cut in, tapping the page. "And don't you dare lie about that. You meant it, or it wouldn't cut so deep." He closed the book with a rough snap. "This world ain't kind to boys like you, Darius. Black boys already carry enough on their backs. Don't you go giving them more stones to throw." That night, Darius lay awake staring at the ceiling, the voices of his classmates swirling with his father's warning. His notebook rested open on his chest. On one page, Miguel's name was scribbled again and again like a prayer. On the next, a blank expanse of paper, waiting for a poem he couldn't bring himself to write. The next morning, things got worse. As he walked through the cafeteria, a boy stuck out his foot. Darius stumbled, his tray crashing to the floor. Laughter erupted, bouncing off the tiled walls. "Careful, lovebird," the boy sneered. "Don't want to ruin your poem." Darius's hands clenched into fists, but he didn't swing. He just picked up the scattered applesauce and milk carton, dumped them in the trash, and left. He could feel Miguel's eyes on him from across the room. That hurt more than the laughter. Because Miguel wasn't laughing, but he wasn't standing up for him either. At home, his father avoided the subject, as if silence could erase what had been printed in black ink. But Darius's mother, gone since he was 6, had always told him that words mattered more than bricks. "Bricks build houses," she used to say, "but words build hearts." Darius clung to that memory, even as his father's silence built walls around them. One night, unable to stand the weight of it anymore, Darius crept into the backyard where his father was fixing a broken fence. The air smelled of sawdust and sweat. "Dad," he began, his voice trembling, "do you hate me?" Samuel froze, hammer in hand. Slowly, he set it down and turned. "What kind of question is that?" "Because of the poem. Because of Miguel. Because of who I am." For the first time in days, Samuel really looked at his son. Not at the words on a page, not at the stares from neighbors, but at the boy who used to climb onto his shoulders and laugh so hard he nearly toppled them both. He saw the fear in Darius's eyes, the desperate need for an answer. "I don't hate you," Samuel said finally. His voice cracked like old wood. "But I'm scared for you. This world, it doesn't forgive boys like you. It punishes them, and I don't know how to stop it." Darius's chest tightened. "Maybe you don't have to stop it. Maybe you just have to stand with me." Samuel didn't answer right away. He just looked at the fence, at the half-driven nails and crooked boards. Then he picked up a brick from the pile by the shed. He held it out to Darius. "Here, place it." Confused, Darius took the brick and set it where his father pointed. Samuel added another beside it. That's how we build. One brick at a time. Maybe that's how we fight, too. The next week at school, things reached a breaking point. A group of seniors cornered Darius near the lockers. Say it, one demanded. Say you're a faggot. Say it so we can all hear. The hallway went silent. Eyes turned. The word hung in the air like a blade. Darius's heart pounded, his mouth dry. For a moment, he thought of lying, of shrinking smaller and smaller until he disappeared. But then he remembered his father's voice. One brick at a time. He lifted his chin. I'm a poet, he said, his voice steady. And I wrote about someone I care about. If that makes me different, then fine. But I'm not ashamed. The boys sneered, but something shifted in the air. A few students looked away, uncomfortable. One girl even muttered, leave him alone. And at the far end of the hall, Miguel was watching, his face pale, but his eyes bright with something pride. Maybe, or courage he didn't yet know how to use. That night, when Darius came home, his father was waiting at the kitchen table with a copy of the anthology. He had circled Darius's poem in red pen. Read it to me, Samuel said. Darius's throat went dry. What? Read it. Out loud. His hands shook as he held the book. His voice trembled on the first line, steadied on the second, and by the third, it soared. He read every word, every fragile truth, until the last line left his lips like a breath of fire. When he finished, the kitchen was silent. Samuel's eyes glistened, though he blinked quickly to hide it. It's good, he said gruffly. Damn good. Darius swallowed hard. You're not ashamed? Samuel shook his head slowly. Ashamed? No. Terrified, yes. But proud too. You got your mama's words in you. And maybe that's worth more than all the bricks I've ever laid. For the first time in weeks, Darius felt something break open inside him, not fear, not shame, but a fragile, glowing kind of hope. The next morning felt different, though nothing around Darius had changed. The walls of Jefferson High still held the same graffiti scars, the cafeteria still smelled of stale fries and bleach, and the teachers still shuffled papers like they were dragging themselves through another day. But Darius carried something new inside him, the sound of his father saying proud. It echoed like a drumbeat, pushing him forward. Still, the stairs were sharp. By third period, someone had drawn 2 hearts and the words D+M on his locker in bright red marker. Some students laughed as they passed, others whispered. Miguel walked by quickly, not stopping, not saying anything, just tucking his chin into his hoodie. That silence hurt worse than the graffiti. At lunch, Darius sat alone in the corner of the cafeteria, picking at a sandwich he didn't want. His friends, what little circle he'd had, were gone. Not openly hostile, just absent, like stepping away from him would protect them from catching the same fire. Then he saw her. A girl with braids and an oversized denim jacket slid into the seat across from him. You write that poem? She asked. He nodded cautiously. I liked it. Darius blinked. What? I said I liked it, she repeated, louder this time. It was real. Most people here just write corny stuff about sunsets. Yours had guts. She stuck out a hand. I'm Janelle. He shook it, unsure what to say. It wasn't friendship yet, not even close, but it was something. And right now, something was a lifeline. That afternoon, when he walked home, the air smelled of rain. His father was outside, mixing cement for a repair job on their porch steps. Samuel looked up, sweat dripping from his temple. How was school? Same, Darius said. He hesitated, then added, worse, maybe. Samuel grunted. They'll keep talking. Talking's easy. Bricks are harder. Darius almost smiled at that, but then the words tumbled out before he could stop them. Miguel won't even look at me. His father set the trowel down. That the boy you wrote about? Yeah. You tell him. No, Samuel wiped his hands on his jeans. Then you don't know what he's thinking. Fear makes cowards out of all of us. Don't judge him for not being ready. Darius swallowed hard. But it feels like I'm standing alone. You're not, Samuel said simply. The words landed heavier than any brick. That night, Darius picked up his notebook again. His pen scratched across the page like it was carving into stone. He didn't write about Miguel this time. He wrote about his father. About calloused hands and steady eyes. About bricks and walls, and how sometimes they weren't prisons, but foundations. He wrote until the words bled into sleep. 2 days later, the storm came. It started with whispers that spread faster than fire. Someone had taken a picture of his poem from the anthology and posted it online, along with a grainy shot of him in the hallway. By the time Darius checked his phone, the comments were already piling up. Slurs, laughing emojis, Bible verses twisted into weapons, and then worse, a comment from a parent. This is what our school is teaching now? Disgusting. By lunchtime, the principal had called Darius into the office. Ms. Holloway, with her stiff gray suit and tighter smile, folded her hands on the desk. Darius, some parents are concerned about the content of your poem. My poem, he repeated, stunned. Yes. Some feel it's inappropriate for the anthology. Inappropriate. His voice cracked. It's about someone I like. That's it. That's all. Ms. Holloway's expression didn't change. We're simply trying to avoid disruption. So you're saying it would have been fine if I'd written it about a girl? Silence. That told him everything. When he left the office, his stomach churned with rage and fear. He didn't know where to put it all. He didn't know what to do with the fact that his words, his truth, were being treated like a problem to solve. That evening, he slammed his notebook on the kitchen table. They want to take it out of the anthology. His father looked up from his plate of beans and cornbread. What? They said it's disruptive. Samuel's jaw tightened. He set his fork down slowly, like a man trying to hold back an earthquake. So they want you to disappear. Yes, Darius whispered. For a moment, Samuel didn't speak. Then he pushed his chair back, stood, and grabbed his work jacket. Come on. Where? You'll see. They drove across town to a construction site Samuel had been working on for months. Under the glow of a single floodlight, half a wall stood unfinished, bricks stacked neatly beside it. Samuel handed Darius a pair of gloves. Help me. Confused, Darius slid them on. Together, they laid bricks in silence, the sound of mortar squishing and trowels scraping filling the night. Finally, Samuel spoke. You see this wall? Yeah. You think it cares what anyone says about it? Whether it's too short, too tall, too crooked? No. It stands because we put it there. Because we built it. He pressed a brick down hard. Your words are your bricks. You stop laying them, the wall never stands. You keep laying them, one day people won't see the insults. They'll see what you built. Darius stared at the wall, something shifting in his chest. For the first time, he understood what his father meant. His words weren't weakness. They were foundation. The next day at school, he carried his notebook with him openly. Not hidden, not pressed to his chest, but in his hands. When someone sneered, he kept walking. When someone muttered, he looked them in the eye. It didn't stop the hate, but it stopped him from shrinking. And then came the assembly. Once a month, the whole school gathered in the gym for announcements and pep talks no one listened to. This time, though, the principal cleared her throat and said, "We will now hear a reading from our school's anthology. Darius Johnson, please come forward." A ripple went through the crowd. Some students gasped. Others smirked. Darius's heart thundered as he stood, legs trembling. He walked to the microphone, clutching the book like a lifeline. He opened to his page. For a moment, the words blurred. He thought of his father, of bricks laid in the dark. He thought of Janelle's steady gaze, of Miguel's silence. And then he began to read. His voice cracked on the first line, but he didn't stop. He read about love, about longing, about finding light in a place that tried to bury you. He read until the words filled the gym, bouncing off bleachers and backboards, echoing louder than the laughter. When he finished, silence fell. Not jeering silence, not mocking silence, just silence. Heavy, breathless. Then someone clapped. Just one, then another, and another, until the sound swelled like rain on a roof. Darius looked up. Janelle was on her feet, clapping hardest. And beside her finally, blessedly Miguel. His face was pale, his eyes wet, but his hands struck together with a force that made Darius's chest ache. The applause didn't last long. Some students rolled their eyes, some sat stiff, refusing. But it didn't matter. Because in that moment, Darius knew the wall was standing. That night, when he came home, Samuel was waiting at the door. He didn't say anything, just pulled Darius into a hug so tight it almost hurt. And in his ear, he whispered, "One brick at a time, son. One brick at a time." But the fight wasn't over. The next day, letters from parents poured into the school board. Demands to censor. Threats to pull their kids from classes. A storm was brewing, bigger than graffiti, bigger than whispers. A storm that could tear apart everything Darius had built. And this time, his father would have to stand in the storm with him. The storm came in paper and voices. By Monday morning, the front office looked like a battlefield of envelopes. Parents had written letters scrawled with outrage, stamped with church insignias, signed with sharp, angry pens. Words like morality, family values, and disgrace appeared again and again. A few letters supported Darius, but they were drowned under piles of venom. The principal called Samuel Johnson to the school. He arrived still in his work boots, cement dust clinging to his shirt. When he walked into the office, Darius sat small in a chair, his notebook in his lap. Miss Halloway folded her hands as if she were about to deliver a sermon. "Mr. Johnson, we appreciate your time," she began. "As you know, there's been significant pushback from the community regarding your son's contribution to the anthology. Many parents are concerned." "Concerned about what?" Samuel asked, his voice low but dangerous. "That the content is inappropriate for a school setting." Samuel's eyes narrowed. "Because it's about another boy?" The principal's silence was answer enough. Samuel leaned forward, planting both hands on her desk. "Let me make something real clear. My boy wrote a poem. A damn good one. You print it, you celebrate it, or you admit that the only problem you got is with who he loves. But don't you dare call my son inappropriate." Darius's heart thudded. He had never seen his father like this, towering, unshakable, his voice cutting through walls. The principal stiffened. "We're simply trying to maintain peace." "Peace for who?" Samuel snapped. "For the parents who'd rather my son disappear? Or for my son, who already walks these halls with whispers burning his back? Whose peace matters to you, Miss Halloway?" The silence that followed was heavy as stone. When they left the office, Samuel rested a hand on Darius's shoulder. "We're not backing down. You hear me? Not 1 inch." That evening, news spread fast. Someone had leaked the controversy to the local paper. By morning, the headline screamed across the front page: "High school faces backlash over gay poem in anthology." The photo beneath it was of Darius, eyes lowered, notebook in hand. Suddenly, it wasn't just whispers in the hall. It was headlines. It was church sermons. It was strangers on the internet debating his existence like it was a topic for a panel show. The pressure crushed in from all sides. In the cafeteria, students gawked openly. In the hallways, some sneered. Others muttered, "That's him. The gay poet." Miguel still avoided him. That cut deepest of all. One afternoon, as Darius stuffed books into his locker, Miguel appeared. His face was pale, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. "Can we talk?" he asked quietly. Darius's breath caught. "I wrote it for me. For you." Miguel looked away, jaw clenched. "Do you have any idea what it's like for me now? People are asking questions. My parents," he stopped, swallowing hard. "They'd kill me if they knew." "I didn't say your name," Darius whispered. "You didn't have to," Miguel snapped, his voice rising. "Everyone knows. They're not stupid." Darius's chest ached. "So what, Miguel? You want me to apologize for telling the truth? For loving you?" Miguel flinched. The word love hung in the air between them, dangerous and heavy. I can't, Darius. Not like you." His voice was small now, broken. "I'm not brave like you." And then he turned, walking away before Darius could say another word. The field spun around him. His knees threatened to buckle. But instead of crying, instead of running, he opened his notebook and scribbled furiously. He wrote until the sunset blurred, until the ache in his chest spilled into lines. Words were the only thing holding him together. At home, Samuel found him at the kitchen table, pen racing across the page. He didn't interrupt, didn't ask questions. He just sat down across from him, watching. When Darius finally looked up, his eyes were raw. "You keep building," Samuel said softly. "I don't know if I can," Darius whispered. "Yes, you can. Because if you stop, they win. And if they win, the wall falls." Days later, the school board announced a special meeting to address the issue. Flyers went up. Parents muttered in grocery stores. Local pastors preached fire from their pulpits. The air felt heavy, electric, like a storm waiting to break. On the night of the meeting, the auditorium overflowed. Parents in church clothes. Teachers shifting nervously. Students whispering in the back rows. Reporters with cameras flashing. Darius sat beside his father in the front row, his notebook in his lap. Samuel's hand rested heavy on his son's shoulder, anchoring him. The board chair cleared her throat. "We are here tonight to discuss concerns regarding the recent inclusion of a student poem in our school's anthology. The floor is open for public comment." Voices rose. One parent stood, waving the anthology. "This filth has no place in our children's education." Another followed. "We're not homophobic, but this is not appropriate for teenagers." A pastor thundered from the aisle. "This is a sin. If the school endorses this, they endorse immorality." The words struck like stones, each one heavier than the last. And then Janelle stood. She cleared her throat, her denim jacket oversized, her voice steady. "I'm a student here, and I read the poem. You know what I thought? Finally, someone wrote something that felt like the truth. You want to ban it? That says more about you than it does about him." Murmurs rippled. Some clapped softly. Others hissed. Then Samuel rose. The room hushed. His presence filled the space, his voice deep and commanding. "My boy wrote a poem. A poem about love. Not hate. Not violence. Love. And you're telling me that's dangerous? That's wrong." He swept his gaze across the room. "I've laid bricks my whole life. I've built walls and houses and schools. But this right," he raised, "the most solid thing I've ever seen him build. And you want me to tell him to tear it down? Not a chance." The room trembled with divided energy. Some parents shouted back. Others sat in uneasy silence. Finally, the board chair looked at Darius. "Would you like to speak, son?" Darius's chest tightened. His knees shook. But he rose, notebook clutched in his hands. The microphone was cold against his lips. "I never thought one poem could cause all this," he began, his voice shaking. "I never thought telling the truth about how I feel could make so many people hate me. But if there's one thing I've learned, it's that silence is worse. Silence builds cages. Words build freedom." They didn't vote to protect it either. They punted the decision, citing further review. But Darius knew. The wall had grown taller. When he walked out into the cool night air, reporters swarmed, cameras flashing. Questions flew. But all he heard was his father's voice, proud. And for the first time in weeks, Darius believed it. But he also knew this was only the beginning. The days after the board meeting were tense, like the town was holding its breath. The anthology copies had been pulled from the shelves temporarily, tucked away in the library office under lock and key. Students whispered about it in hallways as if it were contraband, passing pages under desks, reading lines with the urgency of people tasting forbidden fruit. For Darius, life became a strange balance between being invisible and too visible. Some kids ignored him, pretending not to know his name. Others stared openly, as if he were carrying a scarlet letter. But a handful, Janelle, a couple of teachers, even strangers who had read about him in the paper, began offering small gestures of support. A nod in the hallway. A whispered, "I liked your poem." A fist bump after class. Those gestures didn't erase the cruelty, but they planted seeds. Seeds that felt like hope. One afternoon, after a long day of classes where he'd felt the burn of every pair of eyes, Darius found Miguel leaning against his locker. His curls were messy, his face pale, his jaw tight. "Can we talk?" Miguel asked, his voice low. Darius hesitated. His heart thudded painfully. "You already said enough." "I know," Miguel said quickly, hands stuffed in his pockets. "I messed up. I was scared. I still am. But when you read at the meeting, I've never been prouder of anyone in my life." Darius blinked, unsure if he'd heard right. "Proud?" Miguel nodded, eyes shining. "You stood up there and said everything I've been too scared to admit to myself. You're brave, Darius. Braver than me. And I can't keep pretending I don't feel the same way." The hallway was empty, echoing with silence. Darius's breath caught. "Then say it." Miguel's hands trembled as he pulled them from his pockets. He reached out, brushing his fingers against Darius's. "I like you. More than a friend. Always have." The words landed like a spark, igniting something Darius had been carrying for months. For a moment, the fear and whispers and slurs didn't exist. There was only the warmth of Miguel's touch, the honesty of his voice. But reality wasn't far behind. A door slammed down the hall, footsteps approaching. Miguel pulled his hand back quickly, eyes wide. "I can't. Not here," he whispered. Darius swallowed the ache rising in his throat. "I know. But one day." Miguel nodded, his voice soft but certain. "One day." That night, Darius wrote again. His pen poured out hope and longing. Not just for Miguel, but for a world where boys like them could hold hands in a hallway without fear. He wrote about bricks and poems, about walls and freedom, about how every voice added weight, and how together they could build something that would last. Meanwhile, Outside their little bubble of words and longing, the fight grew louder. Churches organized rallies. The local paper published editorials both condemning and defending him. Samuel was even approached at the construction site by men he'd known for years, their voices edged with warning. "You really want your boy out there like this?" Samuel stood tall, his back straight, his voice calm. "My boy's out there because he's got the guts to be. And I'll stand right there with him." The tension reached a boiling point when the school board announced a final decision. They would vote publicly on whether to keep Darius's poem in the anthology. The night of the vote, the auditorium was packed again. More reporters, more parents, more students. Darius sat with his father on one side and Janelle on the other, Miguel hidden a few rows back, his eyes locked on Darius like a lifeline. The debate was vicious. Parents shouted about morality, about innocence, about tradition. Teachers argued for freedom of expression. Students whispered nervously, some clapping for speakers who defended Darius, others sinking into their seats when the attacks grew sharp. And then, in a move that shocked everyone, Samuel stood again. His voice boomed across the room, not angry this time, but steady, unshakable. "You keep saying my son's words are dangerous," he said. "But I've laid bricks in this town for 30 years. I've built your homes, your churches, your schools. And I'll tell you what's dangerous. A world where a boy can build walls with his hands, but not with his heart. A world where you'd rather silence love than face your own fear. My son ain't dangerous. He's the best damn thing this town's got." The crowd erupted, half cheers, half boos. The board members shifted uncomfortably, the weight of the town pressing down on them. Finally, the chairwoman called for the vote. Hands raised, one by one, for in favor of removing the poem. 3 against. The decision was made. The poem would be cut. Gasps filled the room. Some parents clapped, triumphant. Others shook their heads in dismay. Darius sat frozen, the breath knocked from his lungs. His words, his truth, were being erased. Samuel's hand found his shoulder, gripping tight. "This ain't the end," he whispered. Darius's eyes burned. "It feels like it." "No," Samuel said firmly. "This is just another brick. You keep building." The next day, something remarkable happened. Students started bringing copies of the anthology to school, photocopied pages of Darius's poem tucked into notebooks and binders. They read it in the hallways, passed it under desks, scribbled lines on whiteboards. Janelle organized a reading after school, where dozens of kids gathered in the courtyard to hear Darius read again, their voices echoing against the brick walls. Even Miguel showed up, standing at the edge of the crowd. When Darius finished, their eyes met, and Miguel clapped louder than anyone. Word spread. A local newspaper ran a follow-up story. Banned poem finds new life among students. Soon, copies of his poem appeared taped to telephone poles, slipped under church doors, shared online with the caption, "They tried to silence him. We won't let them." For every insult shouted in the hallway, there was a whisper of support. For every parent demanding silence, there was a student scribbling his words in the margins of their notebooks. Darius had become more than a boy with a poem. He had become a spark. Weeks later, he stood on a small stage at a community center downtown, invited by a local arts group. The room was filled with strangers, faces he didn't recognize, but eyes that glistened with expectation. He read again. His voice was stronger now, steady, unbroken. He read about love, about pain, about bricks and walls, about fathers and sons. And when he finished, the applause shook the room. Backstage, Samuel hugged him tight. "You did it," he whispered. Darius shook his head, smiling through tears. "We did it." When they stepped outside, the night was cool, the streetlights glowing golden. Miguel waited by the curb, shifting nervously. When Samuel drifted ahead to give them space, Miguel stepped close. "You were incredible," he murmured. Darius looked at him, really looked at the boy who had once been too scared to stand beside him, who was now here, waiting. "You don't have to hide forever," Darius said softly. Miguel nodded, his eyes wet. "I know. One day I'll be ready. But tonight." He hesitated, then reached out, his fingers brushing Darius's. Not hiding, not pulling away, just touching. For Darius, it was enough. As they walked home, Samuel's voice echoed in his mind, one brick at a time. He understood now. The wall wasn't built in a day. It wasn't finished yet. But it was rising higher, stronger with every word, every act of courage, every moment of love. And maybe, just maybe, one day that wall would become not a barrier, but a bridge. The boy who dreamed of being a poet had written his truth, and though the world tried to silence him, his voice was out there now, unforgettable, undeniable. And for the first time, Darius knew he was not ashamed. He was proud and unafraid. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.